Yeah, guy, David. That's right. I said it. Yeah, guy. It is Thursday morning. It's the first day of February 2024. And we have a jam-packed show for you. We've got, of course, the first WCT event of the season, which has taken place. Some must-see moments, a Duke Hanamoku, and more surf news. A lot of stuff happening. David, welcome. Good morning.
Thank you, Scott. It is definitely a yeah guy type of morning. And you picked the right day, by the way. Pitched yesterday to you. You're like, no, let's do Thursday. Woke up Thursday, raining. There's nothing else we could be doing today.
Yeah, that's kind of why I picked it, right? It's not a surf morning, it's a talk
Exactly.
morning.
Exactly. And not a pipe masters morning either.
No,
Although
not
they
yet.
they might run the women's in a couple of hours. But I want to give you one listener feedback before we get into the story of the day, which was
Yeah.
yesterday, pipeline. But listener, I thought about this last show and I did not say it on air, and a listener chimed in. And so I think it's worth setting the record straight. Hey,
Okay.
David, just listened to the most recent episode of Spit and had to cringe when Scott incorrectly used the word snake multiple times during his explanation of the drop in lawsuit in California. The incorrect usage is one of my pet peeves. Snaking is when a person backpaddles someone. The person is literally going behind someone's back, which is why the backpaddler is called a snake. If the snake is tricky enough in a crowded lineup, he can even slither behind a person with the right of way at the very last second before taking off and fool the person into thinking that they are the drop in. Amazingly, sometimes even causing the victim to apologize. Bottom line, snaking is not dropping in. It is completely different. It's a completely different surf crime. I feel this is important because plenty of newer and COVID surfers don't have a clue about order in the lineup, and there is a need to put appropriate labels on bad behavior. Would be nice to hear discussion on the next episode with a full apology from Scott Bass, who should know
Yeah.
better.
Okay.
Thanks for the keep. Thanks and keep up the otherwise good work, Peanut.
Okay. Peanut. I fully apologize. According to your definition of the term snake, I have made more than a faux pas, but
But do you
really,
agree? Do you agree that like once
I
you break it
understand.
down,
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say that when you've been back paddled, you've been snaked. There's no doubt about that. I guess what he's saying is that if somebody drops in on you, you're not getting snaked, you're getting dropped in on, which I mean, I'm not going to, it's sort of nitpicking. Like I said, I agree. Backpedaling is snaking. I also think that when you drop in on somebody, you're snaking them as well, but it's kind of,
really?
yeah,
I see I use snaking pretty loosely as well throughout my life, but when I really think about it, it's dropping in. There is a distinction there. Dropping in is when you're in front of the person, snaking's when you go behind them, right?
yeah, but well, look, first of all, again, I agree. Like, I'm not here to, whatever. It's neither here nor there. The bottom line is that an indiscretion has occurred. And
Which
I would
indiscretion.
say that backpedaling better fits like the feeling of snake is when
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
slithers past you like a snake. I totally agree with Peanut there. I guess my question is, what do you call somebody who drops in on you other than a drop in? If you
Yeah.
can't call him a snake, are you saying we're not allowed to call him a snake?
You can call him a snake, but the act isn't snaking. You could say they burned you,
Okay, fair enough.
burned, drop in. Drop in, I think, is appropriate. And that's wouldn't be confused as anything else. That's specific too. Um, the first question I want to ask you about pipeline.
Yeah.
Did your survival pick make it?
Isn't it still going?
Yes,
Like, don't
yes,
they?
but did they make it out of day one? Did they get eliminated in the elimination round yet?
No.
Okay. Because you the one who mentioned potentially picking Kaio?
I was.
Kaio's out.
I know,
Somebody
man.
else DM'd me too, and they're like, "How do you feel about Kaio? Like, I'm not going to use him throughout the rest of the season, but he charges and he's
He,
done well at pipe." And I go, you know what? He's not the worst pick. He's definitely not a safe pick, And sure enough, he's out.
for sure some people pick Kyle because, and by the way, hats off to Kyle. He was absolutely charging. That was a tough heat. I mean, I was
Yeah.
inspired by Kyle.
Yeah.
So I'm disappointed that he didn't get through. I guess I sort of, well, actually I do. I actually root for Kyle. I root for
Mm,
Kyle.
me
He's
too.
my blue collar grinder guy. He's like, seems like he's 40 years old. He's been like a wild card, barely getting into the events for 15 years. You know what I mean? And then when
Yeah.
he does get in, he proves his mettle. So I'm a huge, well, everyone knows you and I are Kyle fans. I mean, we started a whole thing with
Exactly.
Kyle, promoting Kyle as the guy. But that's too bad about the Survival League performance there. My guy is still going. Is your guy still going?
Yes, I officially wouldn't reveal last week, but for the record now, John Florence was my pick.
God, he looked great.
Yeah.
John. I think he
Who's your
had an.
pick?
Oh, my pick for Survival League is Yago.
Oh, okay,
Yago Dora.
great pick.
Yeah, I figured he'll
Okay.
get through too. He's Yago Dora could be the world champion.
Yeah, I agree.
He checks all the boxes.
Yep, I agree.
So we'll see what happens. But so could John Florence, and I would love it if that would be a great final. Yago and John.
Yeah.
Two
Well,
guys that have proven their worth at the most notorious and dangerous wave in the world, Pipeline, and then they've got the air game to win at lowers.
yeah, but can they beat Felipe at lowers is the question. Felipe
Uh,
is the lower surfer. So that's
no
what it
doubt
all
about
comes
that.
down to.
Felipe is phenomenal at lowers, but I don't know,
Well,
man. You don't get me to bite here. I had a whole,
let's
I'll just tell the listeners, I had written out a whole diatribe, like an anti Felipe diatribe. Like, I can't believe how embarrassing his performance is at Pipeline. But then it comes out later that he had stomach flu and he's withdrawn. So I'm going to give him, I know, I'm going to give him a pass because he probably, that wouldn't be a lie, right? He's
yes,
not lying.
it's a 100% a lie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not his doctor and I don't, so I am not going to go into my anti Felipe at Pipeline diatribe because I want to do the right thing and give him the benefit of the doubt.
Wow. Okay, good. You take that side. I'll take the other side. Felipe has competed in 100 events on tour. He has never, to my memory, pulled out of a single heat due to food poisoning or other stomach problems. He has a record of not going on big waves, not surfing heavy reef breaks. This isn't the heaviest of them all. He's pulled out on smaller days. This was, like legitimately scary Pipeline. So the big question surrounding it leading up to it is, will this pattern continue? And on the very first time he's ever withdrawn from competition with stomach issues is on the day where it happens to be at heavy pipe. If he had stomach issues at lowers, would he still paddle out? I'm going to say, yeah. I'm going to say he'd shit throughout the water while he's surfing if he needed to. You know what I mean? Like this is
Lion shit,
not
like large lion shits.
exactly. So there is no question in my mind that this is a completely fabricated story, especially when he surfed the heat earlier in the day and he looked scared. He didn't seem to be having stomach troubles. And then a mere 2 hours later, he has food poisoning. So where did he get the food poisoning from? Was it from on site at the contest because everybody else was eating that food and nobody else seemed to have stomach issues? It's very, very suspect. I'll go on the record say he and his camp are fully lying.
Wow. All right. Fair enough. Well, you know, it's funny. I was watching the Noah Dean. I was reading an article on Stab uh, with Noah Dean. It was an interview. And
Okay.
Stab said, hey, look, it feels like one of the last traditions that unites the surf culture is everyone getting together on the North Shore for the WCT pipe event. Um, there's a kernel of truth to most cliches that the proving ground, the thing that still holds meaning to people, which is probably why guys get bashed for dogging it at pipe and still winning world titles. This is from Stab.
Yeah.
And Noah said, yeah, it still means something to have a good performance at pipeline. Whereas someone might go crazy somewhere else and it just doesn't hold the same weight, really. That's not to say that you can't make it a world title, that is, without going there. There's plenty of people that are crazy good at surfing that don't do Hawaii. But I think you gain a lot of respect for surfing in those types of waves and ripping. And then we cut to Felipe's performance, a 1.77 on 2 waves. And Grant, again, he says he has food poisoning. He's pulled out of the competition due to a stomach flu. I'm not sure actually even how that works. Do you just go, hey, I don't feel good, I'm not surfing? Or do you have to provide the WSL with some sort of doctor's note? Do they just let you slide?
Yeah, I think
Um,
they just let it slide at that point. But let's talk
it's,
about that one heat that he did surf, the opening heat or the
yeah.
opening round heat. He
Well, let me
looked
say this. Before you go
okay.
there, let me just say this. So my diatribe prior to me deciding to give him the benefit of the doubt, my diatribe is that his performance just simply wasn't endearing from a fan's perspective. It's hard for fans to root for Felipe. And we know he's a good human being. This isn't a personal attack. This is simply a perspective from a fan that if you're the 2-time defending world champion, surf fans demand that you surf and charge heavy, solid pipeline on the opening day of the new WSL season and that you make a statement because you're our world champion. Your job, believe it or not, is to inspire us. And I'm not inspired by his first round heat yesterday. His lack of a performance is in some ways an indictment on his world title and on the WSL. Does the world number one F1 driver decide not to give it his all on the gnarliest, most demanding F1 track on the very first day of competition? I don't think so. But again, I'm going to yield and consider that he had the stomach flu as a reason. But based on his performance, uh, it looked like he had, you know, maybe COVID or something horrible.
Hmm. Yeah, it looks like he had the same fear that I would have before I had to give a speech at school the next day. You know what I mean? That makes my stomach churn as well. Like when you're nervous about something, your stomach churns. Turns out that isn't food poisoning, Felipe Toledo. Um, and I agree with you about the indictment part is Felipe he's not bending the rules at all to win his world titles. He's simply using the format that the WSL has designed. And I put a lot of the onus here on the WSL because can you imagine misunderstanding surfing so badly that you make pipeline completely inconsequential in your tour so that the world champ can simply opt out of the most heavy wave on the planet and have zero consequence and just waltz through a world title in one day. You know, I mean, I understand he accumulates enough point throughout the season to get into that finals day, but if the season was designed with the understanding that good waves matter, and in fact, the best waves matter more and should probably be allocated more points, Caleb Robson would smoke Felipe. In that scenario, Caleb Robson would be ranked. I don't know if he'd be world champ because he's still got to get through Gabe and John and other guys, but he would rank higher than Felipe in that scenario. You know what I mean? And because you watch him come through, you don't really think about him. And then you watch him in a heat and you go, holy cow, that guy, the 10 at Portugal last year, the wave of the day yesterday at Pipe, you know? And you go, that guy is our hero. That's the no-name guy who shows up and he's our hero. He faces what none of us would do. And it turns out that he has the talent to actually do it. That's incredible, you know? And so that's what we want to see. And if you understand surfing at all, you get it entirely. Whoever's running the WSL and making the decisions misses the most essential part of surfing.
Yeah, I mean, are you suggesting that Felipe has a strategy that he knows he can avoid treacherous waves in the opening rounds of events at locations like Chopu and Pipeline, knowing that in the next round, the elimination round, it perhaps will be smaller and safer. And even if it isn't, if it's still huge pipe, he can pass on the event and still win the world title. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, entirely. I'm suggesting that he can put his money down on the good events and get through to the fifth position and then smoke everybody at lowers. Now, if the final five scenario was at a wave of consequence, he would have to have an entirely different strategy. But to him, the tour is perfectly designed for him just to surf waist high waves.
You know, Shane Dorian, you may have heard him yesterday speaking about Eli Hanneman and others that he coaches. And he basically said, hey, look, here's the deal. You just have to surf pipeline. You have to put in the hard yards. You have to put in years and years and years of surfing pipeline. And eventually it's going to pay off. And we've seen it pay off for countless guys that throughout the years have put in their time, and it's paid off. And the one guy who it seems like has never put in the time, at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe there's unreal free footage, free,
There
free,
isn't. No.
but it just seems like it's just sad. It's just sad. It's
So
sad that it seems as if, unless of course, and I'm not doubting that he wasn't sick, but based on past performances, it seems like our world champion is afraid of surfing waves of consequence. Now we've seen him at Chopu. We've seen him paddle out. Like he'll go out there when it's massive, like solid, like
not massive.
okay, not massive. But he does just enough. But it doesn't seem like he's putting himself on the ledge and just like it just doesn't seem like
So
it just doesn't seem like that lion heart is really there.
it's the cowardly lion is what should be tattooed on his chest from the Wizard of Oz.
Oh my God, you're bringing the heat.
So
Woo!
we haven't seen him go at Big Chopu. We've seen him a couple of years ago cowering on the shoulder and specifically not go when the tide was low. And then his dad getting on Instagram saying the tide was low and his arm was hurt or something like that. And then the following year, with the big question mark going into it, we saw him sit on the shoulder and take off on one or two waves, but definitely not charging it. And definitely not sharking the lineup like he does at every other stop on tour, where he's like absolutely trying to dominate the spot. You see him being incredibly tentative, and specific to his heat yesterday, the first heat that he did surf, he let a million good waves go. He did not get a wave until there was 6 minutes left. He had priority the vast majority of that time. Waves came directly to him. The other competitors would just sit under him. Felipe wouldn't even make a look for it, and they'd just go and get an 8-point ride. So he took off on one wave with 6 minutes left, and it looked like he was trying to get to the shoulder of the wave as fast as possible, and it wasn't even a throaty one. And then the second wave was completely on the shoulder. It's where I would have taken off, and he tried to do a snap, and he did a snap on it and then just came in. So that said all that we needed to say at that point. Then the fact that he pulled out with diarrhea is just like, you got to be kidding me. Like this is a mockery, So I want to read something to you.
Yeah.
The internet's been amazing ever since this happened, which is why I love the internet.
Like I said, I had paragraphs written about this, but when I found out he was sick to his stomach, I went, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm going to let David be that guy. So please.
Let's let CJ be that guy. CJ Hobgood commented on Instagram.
CJ, bringing it.
CJ Hobgood commented on Instagram, the undisputed champion of the world and never to be defeated, exclamation point, diarrhea.
That's it. That was his take.
Diarrhea is undefeated. It will take anybody down. Filipe Toledo. Have you ever had food poisoning, by the way?
You know what? Interestingly, and this is part of the reason why I'm going to give him a pass and believe him, or at least, I don't know, I guess I believe him. I actually threw up for the first time last week, violently, like in the middle of the night. And it's the first time in like 2 decades, 20 years or whatever. So I was like, oh, you know what, man, there's no way I could have even left the bathroom,
Perfect. Glad you
let
said
alone,
that.
let alone
So,
surf.
so when you had that, were you on your phone scrolling Instagram, fighting with people, writing big diatribes?
No, I couldn't even, I mean,
Okay,
I
perfect.
was
So why was
incapacitated.
so
I
why
was
was Felipe?
incapacitated.
So why was Felipe on Instagram yesterday after his heat when he supposedly had food poisoning, fighting with everybody on the internet?
Couldn't tell you. It sounds like maybe it wasn't as bad as mine was.
That's what it sounds like to me too. Here's what he said in almost seemingly in response to CJ. He said, to the critics and the world champions who comment on social networks outside, believe what you want. I'm not here to prove anything. My health is my priority. To those cheering me on, thank you very much. We are together and haha, we will be back stronger. Now I'm going to read
That's lame. He should have just stared clear of this whole thing.
entirely true. So here's a listener. I woke up to this just an hour ago. A listener named Noah who chimes in from time to time and always has really well, I think, rational and thoughtful commentary. He says, what makes me more mad than him not going on waves of consequence and heats is his repeated response to his critics. It's, I don't have to prove anything to you. That response shows the heart of the problem as he isn't owning his failure as a professional surfer representing his sponsor's country in the WSL. His expectation that everyone should feel bad for him or maintain a wall of positive noise and look the other way when he doesn't go on waves and heats is ridiculous. Scrutiny is a healthy concept in competition sports, and acknowledging your weakness is part of the game. The lion facade with everything cheetah pattern, by the way, why is it cheetah pattern if lions don't have a pattern? Is and by the way, yeah, so is further gaslighting to the fans as to try to convince us all he is courageous and we should celebrate him for that. What a perfect example of the final product of the WSL's changes to the sport. Here is your two-time world champion sitting in a yellow jersey over his lion tattoo and cheetah spray board and shorts bobbing in the on the shoulder like a buoy with priority on an empty lineup at glassy 8 to 10 foot pipe and back door to only go on two mush burgers for a 0.5 something or 0.5. Something is terribly wrong here.
Well, Noah nailed it, and you know, it's funny because I think about Michael Jordan, right? When we think about goats and world champions and people with the heart of a lion, there, if you're a basketball fan, and there are many NBA and Michael Jordan fans listening right now, and they all know the game I'm talking about. There was a famous game called the flu game where Michael Jordan literally was incapacitated. He was he was just he'd been sick all night long, heaving, just grossly stomach flu, like incredible, dehydrated, halftime getting IV. And he went out there and put on an incredible show of championship caliber, greatest of all time caliber performance when he was deathly ill. I mean, and the whole world watched it, and the broadcast, the commentators were commenting on it. Like, it's a very famous game. This was in the world. This is in the finals of the world. The series, the best of seven series. Michael Jordan stepped up, and to me, like that's what a champion does.
Yeah.
You got to step up, and
Well,
and then,
look,
it's sad that Felipe's on social media, sort of chiming in while he's incapacitated, while he's, like, it,
supposedly.
it was just, yeah, it was, I mean, look, as soon as it was going down, I was texting you going, can you believe this? This is before I knew where he said that he had a stomach flu. But I wrote a list of guys, like, I, I'm just so uninspired. There's so many guys I'd rather watch surf pipeline than our quote unquote world champion.
Well, look, let's get kind of beyond Felipe and recognize Pipe is amazing, right? When the day starts, we're all anticipating it. The day starts and Pipe is looks like it did yesterday, and you see people paddling out and all the nerves involved. It's super exciting. It remains, the pinnacle of our sport. And then when Felipe performs like that and conducts himself like that, it completely undermines all of our fandom, and also the way that the WSL again has made Pipeline completely inconsequential undermines it points the finger at them as like, God, why is this even happening? Like, he should be having the Michael Jordan moment where this is actually the finals day and he does have the flu and he needs to paddle out there and we see the brown streak as he's paddling. You know what I mean? Like, that's the moment that they need to elevate up to. And that's the moment that we've seen in the past from surfing.
Yeah.
So the WSL is blowing it here. They're allowing Felipe. They're not encouraging, they're not requiring the best of Felipe. And Felipe's, no, I mean, he's just afraid and he's taking advantage of the situation to a certain degree.
Yeah, it does
He's
put us, it does, there is like a sense of, okay, I see what's going to happen here. We're going to go through the year and Felipe's going to win at Trestles again. And he didn't really show his medal. And that's the part that, like, I've got a year of having to deal with this, like, as a fan. Like, I mean, it's not like it's not like that big a deal to deal with, but from a fan, every time I tune into a WCT event, this sort of bad taste in my mouth, no pun intended, is going to linger. Like we're going to
yeah,
see this whole thing play out and
it's a wasted, it
probably
feels like
a
it
waste
feels
of a
like
year. Like the year's already been wasted.
exactly. I'm going to invest some more time this year and they're just going to undermine it completely at the end. That's how we felt in previous years. By the way, imagine how you would feel if you were Carissa Moore. This is
Yeah.
why she would step away from the tour. This is precisely why she stepped away from the tour. The fact that the WSL does not recognize the speed that they're losing credibility and their fan base with is insane.
Yeah. It's,
We're out. We're out. I mean, I
I mean,
honestly, when I saw the Felipe thing, my first thing was I actually don't even care. I was like, I don't expect anything more from him. I expect this to be able to happen in this environment, this, tour that they've built. And so, I mean, it's not a surprise at all. But then I
yeah.
see all the fun online and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to chime in on this. This is fun.
Well, there is some good news
Yeah.
and in stark contrast to our world champion, how great was Crosby Colapinto's very first wave ever on the, well, it might not, he probably was a wild card last year somewhere, I don't know, but his very first wave of 2024 in WCT competition at the gnarly, it's super gnarly, close period, close interval pipeline. He gets an insane 7.33 backdoor spit out late drop. It was such a contrast. I think it was the very next heat. And I was like, holy crap, this kid just paddled out and just basically snatched all the mojo.
Yeah, entirely. And on the flip side, Cade Madsen, the
Oh
other
my
rookie,
God.
the other rookie from San Clemente, just getting detonated at a backdoor, like a completely doubled up triple overhead backdoor bomb and just getting to the top of it and just free falling the entire way down and falling sideways just in the worst possible position you could put yourself in on the craziest wave ever. And so that's the stark contrast with Felipe is like Cade Madsen doesn't know what he's doing out there either, but he freaking went and it created this super insane highlight moment and we all recognize wouldn't do that. I would never do that out there, like that's the difference between these guys and us. And so, yeah, it was exciting.
Kate Madsen, I sort of slowed it down. I want to say it was a 20 foot, 20 feet, a free fall of 20 feet and complete side pound, ear gouging death drop. Like that would have been one where if he just came up with the white flag, I would have went, yeah, I get it. That one, that one would have done me in.
Yeah.
I'll wait for the elimination round. I'm coming in.
I've got food poisoning.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, somebody chimed in that there might be some stickers going around the North Shore that say Felipe won't go. Like in contrast to the Eddie would go
Like
sticker.
for real though?
I mean, it was just one of those social media things.
Oh, okay.
I doubt it is for real, but
Um, Well, yeah, so there's plenty to be excited about yesterday. We will go through it. I mean, honestly, the Hawaiian wild cards brought their
Can hold
A
on
game.
for
Yeah.
just a sec. Let me just say one more thing. This isn't a personal attack on Felipe Toledo. I just want I know we both know that he's a nice human being. He's he's he doesn't take drugs. He's a family guy. He's a good spokesperson or whatever for pro surfing. Like, you know, he's just not living up to the title of world champion, unless of course he did have food poisoning. Okay, I'm backing away from my caveat.
Yeah, look, it goes without saying. I've never, maligned Felipe Toledo's character, but I do think that he is being disingenuous in his response to any criticism that he's ever received about this. So, um, but the wild cards were super exciting. When you see somebody like Jackson Bunch, it's like, okay, I guess I know his name. I've seen him in a heat or two, shy on Crawford. Um,
You know
but
what this reminds me of? Like when we first started this, I don't know how long have we been doing this?
10 years.
10 years ago, you knew every surfer on the QS on the Challenger series. You're like,
It's
yeah, I've
true.
been watching Jackson Bunch since he was 12 years old. And now you're like, I don't know. I think he's a regular foot. I'm not sure.
It's true. I've lost track of all of them. But those guys, I mean, Jackson Bunch's buzzer beater, there was 2 seconds left in the heat and a perfect pipe wave came and he served it flawlessly. Cheyenne Crawford had a gnarly wipeout on his first wave, paddled back out and just got an amazing one after that. Just looks so comfortable those guys, Hawaiians, look so comfortable in the lineup that there is a real difference, between the wild card and the native surfer. And so that's always amazing to see in these events when that happens. My other kind of highlights from the day or talking points as it relates to this is John Florence and Gabe Medina, two former world champs coming in and potential rivals here in terms of number of titles that they have, and they could be going at it for the next decade if the WSL allows them a platform to do it. Gabe looked like pure domination to me. Just there's no way he's going to lose the heat. He's probably not even going to make a mistake, but if he does, he's going to get right back out there and back it up with an 8 and another 8 and slowly get an 8-5 and then a 9. That's just what he does. He goes backdoor, he goes pipe, he goes on the set waves, he goes on the insiders, he finds the long ones, he gets it's just, he's insane. He looks so dominant. John Florence, on the other hand, so comfortable. Just looks like the most comfortable thing. Like he's gonna slink into whatever, and he's not gonna really look like he's trying that hard. Gabe I'm not saying that Gabe is worse in any way, but Gabe looks like he's actually trying. John looks like he's not, and everything just comes to him, and he surfs so beautifully, so much style. So those were two major standouts for me. Ethan Ewing looked incredible to me. He's not a guy that I put in that same level of caliber as them, but coming off of last year's second place finish and also kind of anticipating what is he going to do now, and then seeing him in waves of consequence with the exact same kind of style, finesse, and talent that he had at lowers and throughout the season last season is like, oh my gosh, like he did his work on the off season. He's here. He's here to like make a real run in this event.
Yeah, Gabe Medina, absolutely. In my mind, he just looks so professional. And part of the interesting thing about Gabe is he generally surfs pipe heats in a busy fashion. He seems busy. He's picking off little things here, little things there. Then he's getting killer, 8.33s, whatever. But he's also staying busy on the inside, picking up waves underneath. And in some regard, it could be suggested that that's how he has been learning how to surf pipeline. Because I wouldn't say that he's a guy that's like put in, he's not there in October and sitting, setting up shop on the beach and surfing every single swell at pipe like a Ballroom Stack or somebody like that.
Right.
He's, over the 15 years that he's been on tour, he's put in enough heats that he just understands pipe from just staying busy in heats out there. Part of he's almost like doing two jobs at once. He's going to get through his heat and he's also going to get as many waves as he can to get a better understanding of what those waves are like and what the reef is like. Gabe Medina, I'm such a huge fan of his, and listeners of this show know that, when he first was on tour, he was easy to not like, at least
Yeah.
from my perspective. But he is so easy to like. He is so Michael Jordan-esque. Like he just looks dominant. And and frankly, I think more dominant than John John. Not at Pipeline, but just in the fact that when it comes to like kind of like putting on the gloves and tying up the gloves and really going to battle, I feel like Gabe's got a little bit more I don't know, he just seems battle hardened.
100% agree. And I think it's also a reflection of like a singular focus. Like now that he's got kind of the family stuff settled, ex-wife out of the picture, like he can focus again on what he focused on for the first 20 years of his life and maybe 25 years. Um, and so John, I feel like has a bit more well-rounded personal life, and also just more less volatile, like less just kind of more integrated into his surf life. And so winning world titles is part of his objective, but it's not his sole objective. Whereas Gabriel Medina is here to win that title this year.
And you mentioned their rivalry, and it is something that the WSL would be so wise to ramp that up because it does exist. Even if they're going to say it doesn't, even if they're going to be nice and oh yeah, John, he's rips and blah blah blah. Just say the things that they often say in these press releases or at these press junctions. But I am excited for it, and what disappoints me is that there's this other thing in the way of it. You know, that there's this potential for that rivalry to not be what we see at the final day at Lowers.
There's a potential for them to not even face one another, to not even match up against each other.
Yeah,
So that
that's
sucks.
that's that's a bummer.
It's a
Yeah,
misstep.
look, those two guys looked insane. Jack Robinson, our defending champion out here, looked insane. Um, you mentioned Cheyenne. I have him in my notes. You mentioned Jackson. Of course, the buzzer beater was incredible. And John, you mentioned, and he just makes it look so easy. It's ridiculous.
Kelly Slater coming off of
Awesome.
a hip surgery, charged, got a couple of good waves. I will say Kelly looked fine, but he did not look dominant. We expect Kelly coming into events like this, especially when the conditions are like this, to really be the guy to beat. And I don't feel like he looked that way in this. And when I saw guys like Cheyenne exhibiting the level of comfort that he did in his local waves, I was like, he could beat Kelly, and Jack Robinson, in fact, I think did beat Kelly in that heat. And Jack, of course, is no slouch. He's a world-class barrel rider. But I just feel like for so many years where Kelly was the guy to beat, there's now, if you really kind of analyze his performance, there's 8 guys that are right there with the same ability level. And of course,
Yeah.
Kelly Slater's 30 years older than all of them, and he's coming off of a hip surgery. So again, not to kind of throw Kelly under the bus, but just to make kind of a critical analysis of where he fits into the modern day tour.
Yeah, I thought his high scoring ride at backdoor to me it looked like 2006. He looked incredible, and all he has to do is find the right line through the barrel, which that is not a problem. And he looks solid, and he looks like he could easily win. Maybe not easily, but he could win. But I do agree with you. There are now like there's kind of like 6 or 8 guys. Like we could say, like Baron Mamiya, Kelly Slater, Jack Robinson, John Florence,
Gabe.
perhaps Iago, Gabe, right? There's probably a few more that are right there that are just pipe specialists that any of them have to do is find the right wave, and they all know how to find the right wave because they put in the time. Let's not forget Kelly Slater, like you said, he's got 35 years of experience there. So those level guys, those 8 guys, or whoever they are, we mentioned them, they know how to find the right ways, which is the difference between if a guy like say an Ethan Ewing who probably, or even like a Jackson Bunch, if they get through, there's going to be a time when they might just get a little nervous and take the wrong wave and not have the patience to know, you know what, that one's not the one. And Kelly knows the one, and those 8 guys know the one.
Well, with some of those guys like Jackson Bunch, it's exciting to see him do the right thing in a heat, but you don't necessarily anticipate him doing it in every single heat throughout the event, and then bringing the A game into the finals. And Gabriel Medina, you do expect to never make a mistake in that way. Kelly Slater was somebody who I thought had kind of aged out to where he knows how to pick the good ones, but he's not going to be as feisty as Gabriel Medina to find all of the like inside drainers, runners when he needs them, when he doesn't have priority. But 2 years ago, when he won his title there right before his 50th birthday, or won the pipe event, um, he did all of those things. It was like he had all of the prowess and talent that he ever had in his youth, plus the tenacity and kind of competitive spirit. Plus, he was picking off all the, it was that magic of the waves finding him, and peaked in the final against, I think it was Seth Moniz that year. So he still had it 2 years ago. I doubted him then. I'm doubting him now 2 years later. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe he will still have all the tools in the tool chest. Um, but you're right. It's not an easy event for him anymore because Gabriel Medina has all those tools. John Florence certainly does. Jack Robinson proved last year that he does. So it's a bit more competition than it's ever been.
Well, the good news is the swell looks solid. Like the forecast looks real solid. Today, as you mentioned, they probably run the girls. It seems like it might be a little bit smaller today, like 5 to 7 feet with 8 foot sets, which seems like a disservice. I think like let's get the women out in the solid stuff. They've proven they can do it at the Vans Pipe Masters, and I'd like to see that. But the good news is Monday, Tuesday of next week, there's some solid swell with great conditions. We're talking 8 to 10 days of 8 to 10 feet, and hopefully it finishes that way. I mean, it
Good.
looks like it could. It looks like if they pick the eyes out of it, I hope they don't just run it quickly, because it looks like there's plenty of opportunities for like days that are 10 to 15 feet. We all, WSL, Jesse, we all want to see ones where there's second reef roll-ins. Like we want that. Like
Yeah.
that's, you and I remember, Martin Potter, 16 years old or whatever, on a second reef roll-in, with a jersey on, and it's just insane, and that is, I mean, if you want clips on CNN, wait for the second reef roll-in days where it's still first reefers, but these guys are getting those sick ones like that Japanese kid got couple, maybe a week ago or whatever.
Was
That was just
so gnarly.
mental. Hold on for
Well,
just a sec.
okay, go for it.
Okay.
I also wanted to acknowledge the rookies because we were tracking the rookie story leading into the event. Cole Houshman was somebody that we talked about having a lot of hype around him. I thought he looked really, really impressive. Turns out he still lost in the elimination round. Um, but I don't know. He looked good. He looked like he certainly has the talent and knew how to like find good waves and charged. And then was sharking the lineup in a way that, like we talked about Gabriel Medina doing. So I'm not sure what went wrong for him. It's almost it's got to be discouraging for him to feel like you put that much effort in, you got some sick barrels, and you still lose on the first event of the season. But I liked Cole. I don't know how you felt about him.
Yeah, I didn't really have too sharp of an eye on Cole, to be honest with you. He's just not a guy that I happen to check out. But
Well, Crosby Colapinto is into the round of 32. Um, Eli Hanneman was the one who actually won his heat. I think actually Jacob Wilcox did as well, the other rookie who won his heat. But Eli Hanneman, 21 years old from Maui, looked incredible.
yeah, he looked solid. Shane Dorian had a lot of interesting backstory on Eli, which you and I and most watchers know about, but he certainly put in his time. The interesting thing about Eli is that he's one of the few guys we see wearing a helmet out there. And you and I've spoken about helmets at length, and we feel like it's just a matter of time before it becomes normal normal for these guys to be wearing helmets. And Shane had an interesting take on it, that he thought it was like a style thing, that it goes against, like, you know, a hipster style to wear a helmet when you've got these when you're surfing in bell bottom jeans, and the helmet doesn't match the outfit. You know what I mean? But at some
He
point
was,
you realize style, it's not stylish, not being able to surf because you have a head injury.
yeah, I think he was more referring to it's not cool is kind of the
Yeah, but he
sentiment,
didn't say it like that. He kind of
no,
mentioned different, like black wetsuit, white surfboard guys, and neon
yeah,
wetsuit guys, and
yeah.
hipster guys, and that it doesn't fit the style. But
Well,
yeah,
you say Eli's one of the few wearing a helmet, but to be honest, we talked about this last week as well. More guys wearing helmets in the free surfs. There was a lot of guys in the competition, far more than ever before, wearing helmets, and the likes of Griffin Colapinto, like a fully capable, but he's also just taking responsibility for his own health and well-being. So we mentioned it last week, but Real Water Sports, our longtime kind of retail partner here on the podcast, has devoted time, effort, energy to stocking helmets in their inventory, just kind of seeing that all this is happening in the surf space. And they have a team rider who, in fact, um, had a head injury, got hit in the face with a surfboard, knocked unconscious, had a concussion. And so they're taking it really seriously. So if you're interested in a helmet, realwatersports.com has a ton, soft ones, hard ones, thin, thick, covers your face, doesn't cover your face, not just for surfing, but for foiling, for kiting, for everything. So that's where you would go get it if you're
by the
interested.
way, it makes me think, if you're a pro surfer and you're concerned about your health, and your health is number one, you would wear a helmet out in your heat.
Totally. Completely. So yeah, so the women are starting. That's exciting. Um do you have any other news stories? I have some follow-up from previous shows about youth and why the youth isn't getting involved in surfing that people were chiming in on.
What about the interesting AI text that we got from our friend Brian? Do you have that in front of you?
I could pull it up. I think
Yeah.
that's
So
very interesting.
while you pull it up, I'll tease the listeners a little bit. So we got a text from one of our longtime listeners, and he went on one of the chat GPTs, or one of the AI programs, artificial
Bard.
intelligence programs. What was it called?
Bard.
Bard,
B
which is,
B A
yeah,
R D.
BARD, which is an AI software, I guess. I'm not too familiar with it. And he typed in, well, David, why don't you tell the listeners what he did?
So the question he asked Bard is WSL surfing, or I'm sorry, in WSL surfing, after which event does the mid-year cut take place? And this is what Bard responded. As of January 26th, 2024, the WSL has scrapped the mid-year cut format for the men and women's championship tours. This means there is no event after which a portion of the competition competitors are eliminated from the tour mid-season. The mid-year cut was a controversial format introduced in 2022 that reduced the field size after the Margaret River Pro. However, due to criticism from surfers and fans, the WSL decided to remove it for the 2024 season.
Wow, AI knows something that you and I don't, David. What is your take on this? How does the AI know something, or has predicted something? And it seems so convicted and sincere and knowledgeable about this.
I know. So that's what's going to be interesting for you and I as human beings to assess where AI um, somehow gathers more data points and sifts through them more efficiently than our brains can, you know, or is it just wrong, you know? And ultimately, I don't think that AI has access into the WSL's inter office.
Emails?
Yeah, exactly. Although they probably do. I don't know if that's where it's pulling the information from. But it would be interesting if it's simply, like I said, gathering trillions of data points and running a certain math equation that is like, look, when you get this much negative feedback from the internet, corporations tend to make this decision as a result. And that could be what it's referring to. The one question here that I would have, though, is, or problem is that they wouldn't do it 2024. Like if they were going to eliminate the mid-year cut, they would have already announced that. They're not going to get midway through the season and then be like, we changed our mind. We're not going to cut the tour in half now. So it could be 2025, and Bard was just off by a year.
Well, I hope they're off by a decade. I like the mid-year cut. Less is better.
Well,
But yeah,
no, but I hope they don't eradicate the mid-year cut. I hope they just do it for the entire season.
exactly.
Yeah. So, but yeah, interesting to see the AI thing play out. Um, Let me address this kind of youth in surf thing.
Yes.
Listener chimed. I've got two emails from two different listeners, but I mean, I think this is resonating with the audience. Obviously, some
Why don't you
thoughtful
set it up for
commentary.
them? Why don't you set up the listeners a little bit?
Well, we were talking in previous shows. It's been an ongoing conversation actually for the past year about how young people aren't getting into surfing. The average age of a surfer is like 45 years old. There was actually a university study written about it, and I think it identified the age as 45. And then we were talking last year just about how it was the year of the 50-year-old, you know, Tom Curran's free scrubber, Pete Mills getting the wave that he got at Mavericks, might have been 2 years ago, actually. Mike Ho got a crazy wave at Backdoor that season, 64 years old, I think. And there's more examples too, and Kelly Slater won the pipe title that year. It's just kind of this, it's all older people. And then there's not as many young people coming up. Like it came up recently because Matt Biolis's Instagram about Surf Expo, where he said it's all people, older people running the corporations. And it used to be young people running them. And then there were startups with guys who are 18, you know, that were trying to get into the business. So the old companies were run by 30-year-olds. So this is in light to those conversations. Somebody chimed in and said, just listen to your Scott and yourself on the topic of young surfers. I'm a first generation surfer and my son is 15. I really started surfing in my late 20s up here in the Great Lakes of Canada. I was so stoked to be able to surf that I rode every single 1 foot wave that the wind blew through. Now that my son is old enough, I was so excited to introduce him to my passion. I got him outfitted with a thick neoprene we need up here and a longboard to catch every ripple. The first couple times out, he was stoked. But once he started looking at social media and at everyone's quote best days, he was not interested anymore. He doesn't have the ability to just be on in the moment and have gratitude to be able to surf in landlocked Ontario, Canada. I was trying to tell him that although it's not anywhere close to perfect, it's our version of perfect, and that he is the only kid in his school surfing, and that is something special. He will surf in Florida when we go down there for spring break, but even that isn't worthy of the gram. The ability to sit and think and reflect is being lost with constant social media input, and with it, the desire to step out and create. Let's go Waco and the Branch Davidian Surf Company. Thanks. Regards, Dave.
It's funny. I got an email from somebody in the industry that was like, I love the idea of a marketing campaign that's against all of the like you said, Branch Davidian, like have some kid in Waco just flipping off Billabong and Quicksilver or whatever, however you would present it, but it would be a big sort of FU, for lack of a better phrase, to the industry. And guy was like, you know what, that'd be a pretty ballsy marketing campaign, but I bet it would resonate. But then the question is, who are we trying to resonate with? It might not resonate with a 50-year-old. And if that's the market, we better stick with keeping them happy, because the market doesn't seem to be 18-year-olds.
Well, that's the exact point, is that rebellion is what everybody was tapping into previously. And so tapping into the rebellion will open up that 18-year-old market that you are talking about that is currently untapped.
Right. Okay.
But
Good.
a listener, by the way, sent me a bunch of Branch Davidian merch. Did I
Yes.
send it to you?
No, I
Oh
love
my
it.
gosh, it's hilarious.
I love
One
it.
one of them is the Kool-Aid man, like the big Kool-Aid shirt, but it says Branch Davidian Surf Co. There's some really good. He sent a bunch hats, shirts, like he just put the artwork on them as a
Yeah.
mock-up. But I'll
Yeah.
send them to you. I'll post them on Instagram. I should have that day. I don't know why I didn't.
Yeah. We
Um,
should maybe do a little run of I don't know. How do you feel? Would you wear something that said Branch Davidian, or is it too?
it's too risque, but it's hilarious as a meme.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not wearing it.
Um, this other one came from James in San Diego. He said, "Hey, David and Scott, I was listening to the latest episode of Spit, and as a 27-year-old in San Diego, I was ecstatic to hear that the average age of a surfer is 45. Assuming this trend remains, and fewer Groms enter the lineup, I will enter my 30s with the average surfer being 50 plus. Music to my ears." I was pondering this while listening to you both on the latest episode, and I think that you guys touched on the root, but I wanted to hear a deeper dive as it seems like a pretty big deal if we are concerned about the longevity of the surf industry. I couldn't care less because, as Jeff Spicoli so eloquently put it, all I need are some tasty waves and a cool buzz, and I'm fine. No one needs turtle sandals or knockoff Patagonia fleeces. All we need are wetsuits, boards, fins, and travel equipment. But I digress. Uh, did you hear that
Yeah.
calamity downstairs?
Oh no, did you just have an accident?
I heard something fall and Austin's crying. So I got a
Oh,
little distracted, but I'm sure they're on it. Um, Carrying on with James's email, he says the driving questions that need to be answered to explaining the aging of the surfing world are twofold. The first question is, why are younger people not as involved or interested in surfing as the generations before them? As you and Scott mentioned, the youth rebellion portion had an allure back then, ranging from beach bums camping at Malibu in the 50s and 60s to punk rock partying, getting wasted and packing tubes in the 90s and early 2000s. All those generations are now either great grandparents, grandparents, or parents of our current up and coming generation. I don't know about you, but my grandparents love to play golf and tennis. The last thing I want to do is be stuck at some stupid country club over the weekend. Old people's interests are lame in the eyes of the youth. And now our so called rebel sport is in the Olympics. Congratulations, Kelly Slater. You and your stinking space turtles made surfing lame. Additionally, in a very broad sense, I think that here in America, younger generations are getting progressively, for lack of a better term, softer and more pampered than the older generations. Speaking for myself and my immediate friend group, our elders fought wars, put in some hard labor to make a living, and faced many challenges relative to me and my generation. We are now able to find jobs that allow us to work from the comfort of our home. We can order food at the push of a button. Anything in our world that we want can be delivered to our doorstep in 2 to 3 days. With that to be considered, what is the point of trying to paddle in the cold, dark ocean when you can get your thrills on the couch with a push of a button? Not only is there the physical surfing technique that must be learned, but also the rules of the lineup, the mechanics of an ever changing ocean, the correct equipment. And if you want to learn, you need some cash to do it. Life for upper middle class Americans today is easy. And as you mentioned, there are only folk who can afford to live by the beach, by the ocean, which creates another barrier of entry. The second question is why old people are sticking around. Conversely, once you learn how to surf and stick with it for a while, you can theoretically do it as long as you live. If it were much easier on the body relative to other, or it is much easier on the body relative to other action sports like skating, snowboarding, etc., where you fall down on hard material and you could break your bones. When you fall in surfing, you fall in water and get tossed around for a couple of seconds. If you stick around a surf spot long enough, younger people recognize and they'll yield to you. Um, if you want to surf forever, you can do it. So for the old folks, sticking around is beautiful, and but not what the surf industry quote wants to see in their market projections. Anyways, just my thoughts. If this is of any interest, keep up the work.
Well, look, there's first of all, talking about old people in the surf space or the aging demographic just sounds so old. You know what I mean? Uh, and some of his commentary is just real like old guy, get off of my lawn. You know, these young people don't know how tough it was, or I don't know. But a lot of what he says is true. I will say this: I was surfing the other day. I even commented on my Instagram about it, and the waves were super good. I think it was Thursday or Friday of last. Anyway, um, and I was watching 18, 19-year-old kids that I know, local kids, like Sutton Tudor and this kid Liam and Harry Gardner, which are like red hot seaside kids that were surfing another ledge up more close to where I surf. And they were getting just drainers, like, miniature little box waves, Western Australia at the, but on a much lesser scale. But I was psyched for him. I was stoked for him, but there's not a whole lot of them. There's
Yeah.
just not a whole lot of them. And it's a lot of things that were touched on in the email are true. Like there's this when for instance, when my son was in high school, he surfed a ton. And when I was in high school, I surfed a ton. And that's all I did was surf. It encompassed my entire identity, my life, everything I did. My son surfs, but my son also played lacrosse, played football, played video games, uh, tons of skating, snowboarding, tons of snowboarding. And so he had a much like broader view of what was available to him. And I'm wondering if that's because the the draw of it being sort of an outlaw thing, the way surfing used to be kind of like we weren't jocks, we were surfers. There was this
Yeah.
delineation, like the surfers were over here, the stoners were over there, the jocks were right here, and the cheerleaders were right there. And you know what I mean? And now it's like there's a homogenization almost. And of course, I'm speaking broadly and without any scientific sociological data, but that's the vibe that I sense, is that it's okay to be all of these things, which I think is neat and kind of good. But back when I was a teenager, you were one of these things. You were either this or you were that. And I think that's no longer the case.
Yeah. The delineation, when I look back, was the big draw for me. Like having an identity was something that I think any teenager needs, and or human beings crave at that age. And so for me, that was the one that resonated with me the most. Like the beach thing was counterculture. Not anybody else in the school was, very few people in the school were doing it. So I had my little own identity that I could be a part of. The being outdoors and the athleticism and all that stuff appealed to me as well, because I grew up playing sports, but I just wanted to do something that was more individual, more independent, more creative. And so that's why surfing. And then when I started kind of imbibing surf media, it was like really rich with characters and personalities and individual freedom of expression, and so I liked certain people for certain things and other people for other things. And I think that it is all homogenized now. And
And the marketing back then when we were kids was much more, um, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, punk rock. There was Quicksilver had this marketing campaign that, if you can't rock and roll, don't effing show up. Don't. And Gotcha, of course, was great at having marketing campaigns that were pretty, like, screw you. We don't even want you.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And now the marketing campaigns are like, join this guy as he surfs in the women's division.
Yeah.
It's
I
all like,
mean, no
it's just
joke.
not very like screw the establishment. It's much
Well,
more like inclusive, which is wonderful from a humanistic standpoint, but just doesn't seem to lend itself towards an identity, a singular reason to be like, yeah, this is who I am. This is what I want to be. This is the tribe that I'm with. It's it's just like another sport now. And part of the
Well,
blame goes on the quote unquote surf industry, the soft goods clothing companies that, I mean, I always point to, I think it was 1986 when Quicksilver first went public and became a publicly traded company. That was the beginning of the end. If you really look at it, like it was a, before you know it, they're buying Cleveland Golf and Rosignol, and the whole thing just went downhill.
you want to protect your interests, and so you start going softer in all of your efforts, your marketing efforts and stuff like that. Once you've probably gotten a taste of the bigger paychecks, and you have people, a big staff that you want to protect and continue to have work and all that, you stop taking risks essentially. And so, but the difference in those marketing campaigns for me, it wasn't that those were exclusive and it was like, you're not, you can't be in our club. It was, they made it aspirational. Like, look, if you work hard enough, surf good enough, put your time in at pipe, you then get to be in this club. And the opposite now with the all inclusive kind of campaigns is just everybody's welcome. Doesn't matter if you have any ability or what your body type is or anything at all. You just come on in. It's fine. And that's okay depending on what you're doing, but it's not aspirational to somebody who actually has ambition or talent or a unique skill set. You know what I mean? And so it's almost trying to be everything to everyone is being nothing to nobody. You know what I mean? It's being absolutely worthless to everybody. And so it's okay if to bring back the campaigns of, we don't want you
How about
unless
no,
you can
you know
prove
what?
yourself.
You're not allowed to wear a leash. Like that whole argument, that whole dilemma of wearing the leash. Because you mentioned something great, which is, hey, you know what? Everyone come on in. Everyone's welcome. By the way, here's a leash. You know, now
Yeah.
I'm not saying that not wearing a leash is a good idea. What I'm saying is the concept of saying no, no leashes here. That's that's kind of what you're saying. Like, hey, if you're capable of swimming out without a leash on and surfing and ripping, you're welcome here. But if you can't,
Right.
you're not allowed. Go learn how, and that's
Well,
gone. And I'm only
um,
using the leash thing as an example. I'm not necessarily,
well, imagine lifeguards if they just said, everyone is welcome, come and be a lifeguard. And then somebody needs to get saved from the ocean. And you have a lifeguard who isn't a great swimmer, who doesn't have a certain amount of, they have a high body mass index, they don't have a certain amount of muscle, you know, they're not going to be able to
yeah,
save somebody, and then everybody dies. So it's totally okay in surfing to do the leash thing, where the leash is part of, not having access to the leash is the equivalent of having to jump through a few hoops and do a few push-ups and meet a certain physical standard to go out there and do something that is very, very dangerous, that will put other people's lives at risk. So yeah, surfing understood that, and the corporations, which became corporations, they weren't originally, understood that as well within the core DNA. And so that was all the marketing was a reflection of that. Um, One thing I didn't address though in that first email from the guy in Canada, I think is also really salient about kids with social media and the comparisons that they're making and how that is then affecting their decisions that they're making in life. I think that's a problem that we haven't fully identified what the effects are going to be of it. Like his kid, without any social media or any other outside, he would just
go skateboarding.
potentially paddle out, paddle out, surf in the lake, and realize gliding on a wave is incredible. This is super duper fun, you know?
Yeah.
But when he pulls up Instagram and sees photos of Hawaii with chicks in bikinis and a perfect 6 foot wave and a guy getting shacked on it, it's like, oh, this is a way lesser version than that.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
It's to his detriment, you know. Anyway,
unfortunately, put the phone down.
yeah. Um, okay, we beat that topic with some sort of stick.
Um, I got a must-see moment presented by treeswax.com, petroleum-free surf wax.
Yeah, me
I
too.
got I got a couple things actually that I want to point out. Um, my first one is just go follow Peter King on Instagram. Yesterday, at the end of the day, he published the free surf footage from Pipeline in the morning before the contest started. It's 60 seconds, and it's so action packed, so rad. I just want to write on there, thank you for doing this. He was
Yeah.
swimming. He probably spent 2 hours in the water to get that 60 seconds for you and I, and then another 2 hours editing to get it on Instagram that night. And swimming at Pipe when there wasn't much of a channel yesterday is
Oh
just a
man.
heroic effort.
Uh,
So go check that out. It is so valuable if you're a fan of surfing.
yeah. Thank you, Peter. That's great. Stoked to hear that.
My actual
Yeah.
my
Go ahead.
original must see moment before I saw that though was somebody, I don't know who, has started an Instagram account called underscore safe play underscore. And all it is they call surfboard shapers and they have a conversation with them on the phone. It's like a mini podcast. And they publish it as a video with like little scribblings of images of that shaper, images of their board, images of people surfing the board, and little scribblings, illustrations and stuff. It's
Cool.
really creative. It's very simple and cool. It's like a mini podcast, but just in a 60-second format. Uh, the current, they've posted three clips so far. The first one was with Shane Stoneman in Central California. Shane Stoneman's incredible. And then the second one was with Mike Wisnant from Jacksonville Beach, Florida. So check those out. Super cool. Safe play underscore safe play underscore on Instagram.
By the way, I was speaking with Christian Beamish the other day.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
did a podcast with him, and um, and we came up with some names of some understated shapers that this guy's Instagram account, what's it called? Underscore.
Underscore safe play underscore.
He might consider reaching out to these guys. Spencer Davis, Dustin Baker, Jonah Reimers or Reimers. I might have that mispronounced. I apologize. Jeff Sabota, and Joe Yee. Those are five shapers that Christian Beamish brought to my attention, that might be worthy of the underscore Instagram account. And yeah, so there's that. Now I have a must see moment, and it is the new Noah Dean film called MASH. Noah Dean and James Cates made this film. Uh, I will say this: it's a little bit long, in my opinion. It could have been edited down. But what you do get is Noah's style, which I find fascinating. It's very understated. He's got this less is more style until he goes into the air. When he goes into the air, he just like slobs his way through these incredible, big, massive airs. So he's got this really clean, smooth, sort of like Wayne Dean, Noah Dean, back footed, really great pocket style, just super less is more understated, as I mentioned. Then he goes up and he's just like cutting edge, next level, doing stuff up in the air. So it's a super fun watch. If you want to get fired up before your surf session, go check out MASH. It's on Stab, a new film by Noah Dean and James Cates.
I haven't seen it, but I was excited for it to come out. I saw a couple of teaser clips. So, and he's an incredible surfer.
And I have a Duke.
Oh, hit it.
Yeah, my Duke is sadly Bill Frierson, rest in peace. He passed away a few days ago. He's my Duke on Morocco. Great guy. I'll read a little bit about him. He was an honored shaper at the East Coast Shape Off this year at Surf Expo. And that just happened a couple weeks ago. And he's a member of the International Surfboard Builders Hall of Fame. He was inducted in 2019. Bill's journey started in 1965 when, as a young surfer coming up in Virginia Beach, he was a member of the Hobie team. In 67, he started shaping boards at Wave Riding Vehicles. He was also the men's division East Coast surfing champion, great surfer, in 1969. In 70, he moved to North Carolina, and that's when he began his Wave Riding Vehicles career shaping boards. And he teamed up with the legendary Les Shaw in 1974 to buy Wave Riding Vehicles, and together they built the business into what it is today. And they're capable of producing a ton of great surfboards. He sold his portion of the business and opened Frierson Designs, where he shaped all of his boards by hand. And his status as a Hall of Fame shaper never impacted the way he did business. He always kept the price right and wanted to make sure you were a stoked end user, friend, and surfer of his boards. He did it for the right reasons. And it was all about the art for Friar Bill Frierson, rest in peace. He's my Duke Kahanamoku.
Excellent memoriam.
Well, David, look, we've said a lot. The pipe event's probably going to happen again today, and we've got more good, solid pipe of contest, hopefully, on the horizon. Until next time, adios and aloha.